All right, this is part 2 of lesson 3.8, and we're going to continue working. Now, in the previous problems, we were given some points. Here, we're going to be given some information, and it is really just points. They're very similar to what we did here. The process is the same, but we need to identify what our 2 points are from the information. A car rental company charges according to a linear function where the cost depends on the number of miles driven. If driving 20 miles costs $55 and driving 31 miles costs $63.25, find the linear equation representing the cost, which is going to be y, where x is the number of miles driven. So we will start here. X is the number of miles. It tells us outright in our instructions here. That is number of miles. And they tell us that y is the cost. So it's going to be the total cost in dollars. So that's going to be important. Now let's build our table. Now for these problems, I am going to use the table method to find the slope, the rate of change. Instead of using this equation, I find this a little bit easier, and I like the visual better. And remember, x is the number of miles, so if I'm driving 20 miles, the corresponding cost is $55. But if I'm driving 31 miles, the cost is $63.25. So just like the previous problem, we are going to take a look, how much did x change, how much did y change? Well, 20 to 31, that is an increase of 11. But 55 to 63.25, that one's a little bit more complex. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a calculator to help do that math for me. See if I can get a spot here where that shows up better on the camera there. Okay, so 63.25 minus the 55, that is going to be $8.25. So we are going to put a plus 8.25. Now remember, this is our change in, sorry, I need to move that up. This is our change in y. This is our change in x. So our slope, our change in y over change in x, is going to be 8.25 over 11. Now for this problem, since I already have decimals, it only makes sense that I'm going to continue to work these with decimals. So, see if I can get this to, here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put the 825 and divide it by 11 to get 0.75. So that means 75 cents. So 0.75. Now, with the previous problems, we've been dealing with fractions, but you can deal with these as decimals, and I think in this problem it actually makes more sense, because this as a decimal tells me it is $0.75 per mile. Because remember, it is change in y, which is dollars, over change in x, which is miles. Now that I know the slope is 0.75, we're going to find the y-intercept, and we're going to use the same process that we did before. Y equals mx plus b. We know m is 0.75. All we need to do is plug in an x and a y, and we can find our start value, or y-intercept. So to find that start value, we have to pick one of the 2 points. Well, to me, the 2055 seems like a much better choice than this one with that decimal. So remember, this is the y value, so it goes where the y value is here, 55. And the 20 is the x value, so I'll put it here where the x goes. And whenever you have 2 things that are next to each other and you're substituting, put parentheses around it. I didn't have to put parentheses around the 55 because it's all by itself. All right, let's go and do the work. 0.75 of 20 is 15. Double check that on your calculator. And then to solve for b, I'm going to just flip the 15 to the other side. It becomes negative 15. And then when I subtract, I get 40. Now, what does that 40 mean? Remember, this is the y-intercept, so it's actually the cost. The cost is $40 when the number of miles is 0. So they're going to just charge you $40 to rent the car, and then they're going to charge you 75 cents in addition to the $40 for every mile that you drive. So here's your equation. Y equals 0.75x plus 40. So you start at $40 and then you pay 75 cents for every mile. So that winds up being your equation. All right, let's turn the page. All right, so here we have a graphic designer. The total charge for a project follows a linear function based on the hours worked. After working for 2 hours, the cost was $75.50. But after working for 4 hours, the cost is now $101. And we want to find the equation for the total cost where x is the number of hours worked. So let's define that out. X is equal to the number of hours worked. And then y is going to be the amount charged. In dollars. So let's go ahead and build a table based off the information that's there. So we know that 2 hours of work costs $75.50. And 4 hours of work cost $101. Well, we'll go ahead and do the same thing. All right, so looking at this, we can see that hours is X, so we went from 2 to 4 hours, so that is an increase of 2 hours. That's our change in X, or our change in hours. Here we can see we went from $75.50 to $101. Well, that sounds like a calculator moment to me. It's not really a great place to put this calculator to get it to show up well. I apologize. But let's go ahead and put the 101 minus, we're going to turn it on first, 101 minus $75.50. So that is $25.50. So plus $25.50, that's how much it increased. So that's our change in Y. And remember, our slope is change in Y over change in X. So that is $25.50 divided by 2. Change in Y, change in X. So just a little shortcut here. I don't have to retype this whole thing. If I just hit divided by 2, it takes the answer, and which was at $25.50, and divides it by 2 for me. That is $12.75. So $12.75, that is going to be, oh, sorry about that. I had somebody knocking at the door. So $12.75, that means it is going to, the amount they're charging per hour is $12.75. And so that is our rate of change. Now the question is, how much are they charging? What's the start value? So we want to find that y-intercept, or that start value. So same process again, y equals mx plus b. We're going to plug in, well, we can choose either point. I could do 275.50 or I can do 4,101. This doesn't have fractions in it. Even though the number's bigger, I still think this is going to be easier. So I'm going to put 101 in for y. I'll put the 1275 in for x. And I'll put the 4 in for, sorry, the 1275 for slope, for m, and then 4 in for the x. And we'll solve for b, which is our start value. So we'll go ahead and multiply 4 times 1275. And you should get 51 for that. And then to get b by itself, we'll flip the 51 over, which gives me 50 as my result. So what does that mean? Well, the graphic designer charges $50 just for taking the job, and then charges an additional $12.75 per hour. So y equals $12.75 x plus 50. So $50 plus $12.75 for every x for every hour. All right. There should be one more video. Since this is at 10 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and stop this video. Please continue on to the third one where we'll go ahead and wrap up this lesson.